for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, is Raymond Marsh.
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here in the Sick Podcast Network. He is Pierre McGuire. I'm Jimmy Murphy. Pierre, how was your weekend, my friend?
Busy but good. Lots of hockey. I saw you Friday night in Durham, New Hampshire. Congratulations to the Wildcats. They built a really good team. The fan base there is electric. There's 6,000 people there on Friday night. I saw a really good game there on Friday, but a better game on Saturday at Northeastern between the same two teams. Tons of NHL, obviously. But, Jimmy, we've got a breaking situation going on with hockey right now. I was at Harvard most of today watching Shattuck St. Mary's play, Northwood Prep play, South Kent School play, and Culver Military Academy play in a kind of a showcase.
Right.
And there were a lot of scouts there, Jimmy. A lot of scouts.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just telling you, and some are national cross-checkers. So when they do that, the players in the games that they want to see and they want to cross-check them against other guys. There was one scout I spoke to that had taken a red-eye flight from scouting the Western Hockey League last night. He said there were 4 Division I teams at that game, at a major junior game. Today, Caleb Hughes has left West Kelowna, I should say, and is going to the Erie Otters. Earlier, Jack Pridham, who was a Chicago draft pick, left West Kelowna to go play for Michael McKenzie and the Kitchener Rangers. This is becoming a developing story. We talked about it on the eye test before anybody else talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get that clear so there's no poaching on information.
Yep.
And I'm just telling you right now, this is now the biggest story in college hockey.
Yeah.
Major junior players coming or leaving to come play college, or Tier 2 junior players leaving, whether it's a USHL, the North American Hockey League, the BCHL, the AJHL, and going to play major junior. Now, it's not everybody, because they want, obviously, the major juniors want only the top players.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're getting right now. Hughes is a tremendous talent. He's a slick skating forward, point producer. He's committed to BU. Pridham is the same. His father works for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a Chicago draft pick. He's a BU commit. He's a slick forward. He gets points. He's already played 2 games. Pridham's already played 2 games in Kitchener. He's got a goal and 3 assists in 2 games. Okay?
Wow.
I'm just throwing it out there so everybody knows.
Yep.
This is now, and I know people are going to start to cover it, but we're going to cover it first, and we're going to cover it right.
Yep. That's what we've been doing.
This is a massive sea change. This scout, who's a very good friend of mine, I saw him right away. I said, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "Pierre, I took the red eye last night. There's a couple guys I need to see." And he's a national cross-checker.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, good." And he says, "You won't believe what I saw yesterday." I said, "Where were you?" He goes, "I was out in the Western Hockey League." And I go, "What did you see?" I thought he was going to tell me about a great player. And
Yeah.
you know my guy's McKenna.
Yeah.
Dad McKenna. That's my guy in the West.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he's going to be everybody's guy, but right now he's my guy. And he said, "I took the red eye, and before I got on the plane, I started thinking. I saw 3 different Division I colleges at a major junior game, scouting."
Wow.
Jimmy, I can tell you right now, I scouted for a long time and coached Division I college hockey. I never went to a major junior game until I was working in the NHL.
Who was it? Coach Borak a couple weeks ago with Merrimack said you went on the rink if you wore your emblem.
I told him the story. I said, "You got to be careful, man." That's when we were both going to see Marty Brodeur. And I just told him, he thought I was messing with him. I said, if you wear your college outfit, someone's going to beat you up. So this is this just happened.
It's begun.
It's begun. And I don't think anybody thought it would happen this quickly. And just one more story on it, and then you can ask away or go wherever you want. A very powerful agent that I know very well from Toronto. He was at the Northeastern New Hampshire game on Saturday night at Northeastern at Matthews. And he had players playing for both teams in the game. He just wanted to meet with them and talk to them. And he asked me about the major junior to college situation and what my take was, having been involved with both. And I said, I think it's going to benefit colleges long term. And I think it's really going to benefit major junior long term. I think it'll have a major role in not destroying, but taking prep school down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think prep school hockey will be as good.
Yep.
And I think it'll really affect the USHL.
Yeah.
How much, I don't know. I don't know that yet. But here's what I do know. There are tons of rumors out there that Muskegon in the USHL and Youngstown in the USHL, two very prominent, strong franchises, very well run. There's lots of rumors that they're going to go into the Ontario Hockey League.
Wow.
And if they leave the USHL, and I'm very comfortable saying this because I'm hearing it from extremely prominent hockey people, if they were to do that, that really changes the dynamic of the USHL. Those are flagship
I know.
franchises in the USHL. They're very strong, very, very strong.
Right.
You know, and I don't know what that does. I don't know. I don't know. No.
And the BCHL too, I would imagine it's going to.
I think the BCHL, because they kind of had an inkling something like this was going to happen.
Okay.
They kind of merged with the Alberta Junior League. Not all the teams, but some of the top teams. So I think there's something there that's more positive for them, because not everybody's going to be able to play major junior. They're not.
No.
They're not. But I think the trickle down is starting now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this happened way quicker than I think a lot of coaches thought it would.
Yeah. Well, good on them. They're getting ahead of the curve. You know, they're getting ahead of it, and it's happening. But
remember what I told you? Remember what I told you about what colleges should do? They should change their staffs.
Mm-hmm. And start
the
specific department right now. Yep.
You need to have a director of hockey operations, and their only job is to know players, coaches, and agents. That's their only job. You don't go near the ice. You don't talk to the players that are playing in the games. You're not coaching,
but you're
managing.
Yep.
You are managing player assets. You have a distinct relationship with all the agents. You have a distinct relationship with all the major junior coaches. You definitely know the portal players, because the portal's still part of this too. Mm-hmm. You're basically a general manager, but in college.
Yep.
And you do it. You run it.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, I'm convinced there'll be a
left.
lot of good teams in college. But if you're going to be a really great team, you're going to have that.
Yeah.
You're going to have that position.
Well, speaking of great teams, I want to mention one more college hockey note while we're on it, Pierre. A credit to our good friend, Coach Kavanaugh in Stores, Connecticut, with the upset of the year so far. They beat the Boston College Eagles 5-4, and our man Jacob Fowler, he had an interesting night. Let's just say that. But you know what? It's passion. I love it. Yep. So if
he looked like Ronnie Hextall, he was looking like Ronnie Hextall for a while.
That's exactly what. If anyone's not aware, just go on YouTube. And Jacob Fowler had a Ron Hextall moment. Went after a UConn player behind the net, and he will be out there next game, I believe tomorrow night at Providence.
Tomorrow night at Providence.
Yeah, so that's one game he'll miss, but big upset there for UConn. And you know what, Pierre, we've had Coach Kavanaugh here now twice. We know how hard the Hockey East is. We know who the big boys are in that league. So it's a big thing when your program can do that. When you can go in and you can do that, it's huge. It's a big upset. So
I think we talked about it when we had Mike on. The one thing that really impressed me about his team, because I saw them play Colgate the opening weekend, they had already established an identity. They were going to be hardworking. They were going to be gritty. They were going to be in your face. They were going to play disciplined. They weren't going to give up a lot of odd man rushes. They were going to create a lot off the cycle and jam in the net. And I think Mike has done that. And that's when you can do those things, Jimmy, it usually leads to the potential for upsets. It usually does.
It does. And I mean, look, it's a long season. You knew BC wasn't going to go undefeated by any means, but it's a big upset there for the UConn man. I'm sure BC will bounce back, though.
You know what's interesting? I can tell you this right now. So I told you I spent the day over at Harvard. You know who was there?
Well, imagine our friend that we had on campus. By the way, if anyone missed that interview, I highly suggest it. It was a great interview with Ted Donato here on the eye test.
And James Marcoux and Matt Gilroy, his assistants, were there. But Greg Brown was there, the head coach from Boston College, and his assistant, Mike Ayers, who's been with him forever. Mike was there as well. So I talked to both of them, and they were extremely engaged. There's a player, I will not tell you who it is, but there's a player that they have commitment from, and they're very excited. So they were there to watch that player, and I would say that was a good choice. It was a good player.
Yep. And so, but it was good. And, you know, I got to say, as Pierre said, we watched his son Northeastern play UNH on Friday. And I hadn't been to the Whittemore Center in a while, Pierre, but that was fun. Good crowd they got up
They've
there.
done a great job. You know what? They deserve a lot of credit. Mike Sosa and all the boys up there, Glenn Stewart. You know, they've done a really nice job. And the crowd was outstanding.
It was great.
Civilized crowd. It's a beautiful building. The sight lines are all good. There's not one bad seat in that house. No. Fans were electrifying. I thought the band was awesome. Their band was outstanding. So yeah, no, it's really good. Really good.
Yeah, it was good times. I was glad to be there. All right, let's get to some NHL talk, Pierre. Let's start. Because it's the biggest topic right now is the game between the Maple Leafs and the Oilers. They're a great win by the Maple Leafs there in overtime, but obviously, unfortunately, the big story coming out of what was such a great game, unfortunately, was Ryan Reaves' hit to the head of Darnell Nurse. Darnell Nurse now out approximately 5 to 10 days. Reaves gets a 5-game suspension. Pierre, I think that's way too little right now. And look, I'm not taking away from the progress we've made as a league and as an environment around our league to be more aware of headshots, to try and get it out of the game. I do think there's been really strong efforts to do so, but we still got a ways to go because there are people today that are saying that's too much. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? There was no need for that hit. It wasn't accidental. He clearly targeted the head, period, end of story. And I think it should have started at 5 minimum and gone up somewhere between 5 and 10 is where I'd have it.
I think you're not wrong. I thought 5 is probably where it was going to be. I said that on a couple of shows.
Yeah, you told me that right away too when we were texting.
Yeah, I'm not surprised it's 5. I think I texted you that, right, Jimmy? Did I text you that? I thought it'd be 5. I didn't like the hit. You know, I love physical hockey. I played physically. I'm a big fan of physical hockey. I don't like the hits to the head. That was a hit to the head. Principal point of contact, clearly. Hit to the head.
No if.
And then you see Darnell's done 5 to 10 days. So, you know, that's not a good thing for them.
Yeah.
So they play in Montreal tonight. Then they play in Ottawa tomorrow. It's 3 and 4. That's a tough game, especially time zone travel and everything. So, I mean, I feel badly. The one thing I'd say is I don't know how much people really know Ryan Reaves. When he was in St. Louis, I really got to know him well because I did a lot of their games. And I found him to be a tremendous team person. I found him to be really coachable. I found him to be really energetic and prideful. So there's a respect that I have for him. I didn't like that play.
No.
I just didn't like it.
Here, you have a famous saying too, and I heard you say it on Mitch Melnick's show a lot. Yeah. Good people do bad things.
Sometimes good people do bad things. Sometimes they do.
None of us are perfect. And so when I go off like that, I'm not trying to knock Reaves by any means, but he did a bad thing. And I think, and Pierre, I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, and I know I'm going to probably tick off some of my friends in the PA when I say this, but I think there needs still to be more of an effort to stop, because, you know, he has the right to appeal this, right? And we've seen some of these things be appealed. Why are we appealing on behalf of the aggressor as opposed to the victim? That's something I don't understand and something that I don't think will ever change, but it needs to change. I don't get it.
Yeah, I've testified in a lot of these things especially my younger part of my career.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the things that frustrated me the most, especially when one of your players was the aggrieved. And you'd be sitting there going, wait a second. My guy didn't do a thing wrong. He's not playing for a month.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there finally, and look, I get the PA, they all pay their dues.
Right.
But one guy can't be better than the other. They're supposed to be the same. But I understand what the PA is doing. I do understand that part of it. I want to be crystal clear on that. I get it. But I also know from the other side of it, there was a point of frustration. I don't want to get into names or different cases.
Yep.
But I remember once going into a hearing in New York, and my player was the aggrieved.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we got no support.
Yeah.
Like, nothing.
It's
And I was like, whoa, wait a second.
such a strange dynamic.
This is
Yeah.
not right. And, you see it more and more as you go along. But the one thing I'd say is I think one of the things that Commissioner Bettman did that never gets enough credit, there used to be a dean of discipline. Forever it was Brian O'Neill.
Mhm.
I think what they've done now is they've made hockey operations. I know George Peros is involved in it. Obviously, he's the quote-unquote dean. But
Mhm.
there's more than George.
Yeah.
There's more. It used to be just one man. Now
There's more opinions.
more.
Yeah.
And I think when you have more, you can make more thoughtful and probably smarter decisions.
For sure. Well, listen, we'll get to a little more on the past weekend and also look ahead to the games tonight because we do have a busy Monday schedule. And one of the teams that is in action tonight is the Philadelphia Flyers against the Colorado Avalanche. And on to talk about the Flyers with us right now is Kevin Kurz of The Athletic. He used to cover the Sharks. He's covered, I think, the Islanders. He's been all over the place, right?
Yeah. This is our second year back in Philly, so
You just want to get away from those San Jose taxes. I know, Kevin. Don't worry.
I mean that covering that team before this year would have been no picnic either.
Anyway, Kevin, good to have you on. How is everything?
Pretty good. Yeah, good to see
Nice.
both of you guys.
Good. Yep. And we just saw that Samuel Ersson will be out for a little here. Obviously, goaltending hasn't exactly been a strong point for them, but Kolosov comes in right now. He's struggled. Do you see is this a chance for him to turn it around?
Yeah, Sam Ersson was finding his game, I feel like, right before he suffered these back-to-back injuries. And it's the same injury. I believe it's in his groin. Nothing major. I think the team's just a little concerned that it's something that's reoccurred. So they want to be extra careful with him. So I think, Ersson, from what I was told, is going to be out 1 to 2 weeks. So that would mean the soonest he could return would probably be Saturday if you date it back retroactively. But the backup goaltending position was a disaster for this team for the first little while. Ivan Fedotov just did not look like an NHL goaltender. Kolosov is here sort of as an emergency because I think they were concerned about Fedotov even going into the season. But now, Fedotov has found his game. He's won 3 starts in a row. He comes out. Kolosov goes in. We'll see what he is. I mean, it's still a little too early to say. I think even team personnel knows that Kolosov should not be here yet. Part of the reason he's here is because he wants to play in the KHL if he's not in the NHL. And I think the Flyers, my understanding is if they try to reassign him, he's going to bolt back to the KHL. So they need him right now because they only have 2 healthy goalies. So we'll see. I mean, he's a real wild card here. I don't think he's looked particularly good. And now all he has to do is face the Colorado Avalanche. So
With their power play and everything else, Kevin, you're spot on. Kevin, one of the great treats I think you have is you get to see the reemergence of John Tortorella as a coach and a voice of reason in the NHL. He wasn't always that way. I mean, I coached against him a lot of years ago, and he was a firebrand. He was out there. I see him taking charge of this team, Kevin. Am I wrong that now they've taken on his persona, and his persona is not only hard but fair? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, actually, I'd love to get your perspective on this, Pierre, because he said some interesting things to us going into this season, how his first 2 years with the Flyers, he was hard on everybody, right? Travis Sanheim coming out of the lineup, Morgan Frost coming out of the lineup, key guys that he would not be afraid to scratch. I mean, you go back to his first year, they scratched Kevin Hayes, Tony DeAngelo, all these other guys. So he's certainly had a heavy hand, I think, through his first 2 seasons. But he said going into this season, the third season with any coach on any team is a little bit different because there's no secrets anymore between the two, right? The players know he's used all the tricks in his bag for 2 seasons. He knows each and every player and what they bring and how they need to be motivated. And he said that specifically when it comes to Morgan Frost. Now, Morgan Frost has not been very good this season. He's come out of the lineup. But Torts said something interesting about when he was asked about Frost. He said, I have to coach him differently this year. I don't think he deserves that. I think he deserves that. And to me, the implication was, this is not scratching a guy just to send a message or just to get him going. Right now, he's just scratched because he hasn't been very good. And I think both sides understand that. So, we all know the shelf life of NHL coaches in this business. It's usually pretty quick. I think Tortorella made some mistakes last season when it came to scratching Sean Couturier and not necessarily pressing the right buttons, overworking the goalie. So I do think he was a little bit to blame for their collapse late last season. But on a whole, he's been a net positive for this group. I don't think there's any question about that. We've seen a number of players take steps, young players take steps in their development. Sanheim's reached a new level. Travis Konechny's reached a different level. Guys that have been a little bit hot and cold this year, Tyson Forster and Owen Tippett took big steps last year. I think they're hoping to get them going a little bit. Cam York, who's out of the lineup right now because he's injured. On the whole, if you look at the Tortorella era so far, I think there have been some real good results here. And I think, they're not going to compete for a Stanley Cup this season, but I think everyone in the organization feels like they're pointing in the right direction at the moment.
See, Jimmy, I agree with what Kevin said. You know how much we think of John. Mm-hmm. One of the things, I'm watching all the games like Kevin is because he's got a better seat than me. But I see the power that Brad Shaw has, and I want to ask Kevin about this. I think Brad Shaw is a way undervalued part of that staff. Mm-hmm. Darrell Williams, I think, is a very undervalued part of that staff. So, but tell me, am I wrong on this, Kevin, or is Brad really a big part of this?
No, there's no doubt. You're absolutely right. And Torts has said that over and over again that he thinks Brad Shaw is one of the best assistants in the league. And you just look at how this season has gone, and it's a credit to Brad also because they were a little bit of a mess for a little while here when the season began. Defensively especially. But if you look over the last little while, I think it's 7-3-1 in their last 11 now. They got the defensive part of their game down first, right? That's obviously the most important part is you've got to be able to play well in your own zone and play well defensively if you're going to have any hope of kind of turning the ship around. They did that. They started to add more layers. The offense came around. Matvei Michkov has kind of found his game a little bit at 5-on-5 the last little while. The goaltending's been better, I think, obviously partly because the defense has been better in front of those guys. So, Brad Shaw is a guy that Torts trusts fully to run the defense. And it's a little bit of a challenge now because they have so many guys hurt. I mean, we're going to see that the patchwork defense they have in there tonight is really going to be tested against Colorado. So we'll see if Brad has them ready. But you look at individually guys like I mentioned, Travis Sanheim, Cam York. They've all, I think, really done well under not just Torts, but especially Brad Shaw, who's working with these guys every day. And the penalty kill, you look at the penalty kill has been outstanding. I think it was third or fourth in the league last year. It's third or fourth in the league this year. I mean, that's Brad Shaw's running that.
Jimmy, I'm so glad to hear Kevin say that because that's the one. Not enough. If you're not in that marketplace, you don't even know who Brad Shaw is. Yeah. And that's why, Kevin, that was an awesome answer. Thank you. Because I appreciate what those guys do. They're kind of like non-entities, but they're critically important, especially when you're going through a rebuild. So that was awesome, Kevin. Thank you.
And just going back to Tortorella and just the way he's handled certain players, when the Michkov healthy scratch happened, everyone's flipping out on social media. Oh, my God, here we go again. Torch is going to ruin a young player, blah, 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 blah. In my eyes from afar, Kevin, you can tell it's because you're there on the ground, but it seemed to have gone the opposite and almost helped him. I'm not saying it's like made him better offensively. He's already got that, but it seemed like he responded well to it and Tortorella responded well to it.
Yeah, and if you look at what Michkov was doing at the time he came out of the lineup, all of his points were on the power play. He had one, I think it was 10 games in, he had 1 5-on-5 point. It was a secondary assist on a goal by Nick Seeler. He wasn't playing well 5-on-5, just full stop. And that's to be expected. That's no knock against him, right? He's figuring it out, and there's a language barrier between him and the whole coaching staff. So, and I went back and looked at some of his shifts in the game before he came out. They were playing Carolina, and he just looked tired. He just looked like he wasn't really sure where he was supposed to be going. He was not. You look at the schedule, right? Obviously, it's the first time this guy's played every other day like this, and the Flyers' schedule for the first part of the season was pretty tough. It was 3 back-to-backs. It's already Western Conference road trip with 4 games to start the season. I mean, and on top of that is Tortorella's training camp, which everyone knows is no picnic. So I think it was just a good time for him to come out. I said so at the time. I thought it was the right move. And since, you've seen the team defensively, they got their game in order. They found some line combinations that were a little bit more effective. Michkov's now on the third line because the other 2 lines have looked to get some chemistry going, have had some chemistry lately. So, And he's benefited from it. I mean, you look at the way he responds, an overtime goal in Ottawa, a couple assists last game. So he's playing well. I mean, they're slowly trying to integrate him into the team. Power play, he's been outstanding. I mean, the power play's dropped off a little bit lately with some of the guys that have come out. So it's not so hot at the moment, but I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, he's got 15 points in his first 16 games. I mean, what more can he ask for at this point?
He's a rookie scorer in the league. He's ahead of Stankoven, and everybody thinks Logan's going to be the rookie of the year. This guy's got more points than him. That being said, I'm curious, Kevin, if anybody's gone back in their Rolodex with John Tortorella and said, you know, I remember when you were a young neophyte coach, you were working in Buffalo, you were running the power play, and they had a guy there named McGillney, and he played with LaFontaine and Himmler. Did you learn anything about McGillney that maybe helps you with Michkov, even though it's almost 30 years later? I would want to know that.
Yeah, I'm going to file that away. I'm going to steal that, Pierre. Thank you.
There you go.
No, do it.
So Torts was running the power play in Buffalo and McGillney.
Buffalo, when they had McGillney, LaFontaine, and Himmelev, and the late Dale Howardchuk and Doug Bodger on the back end. And
wow.
Torts and I used to scream and yell at each other in the old odd. He was on one bench, I was on the other. It was pretty good. And John Muckler was his boss, and Muckler looked at me like, what's wrong with you two guys? I am a big John fan, though.
Yeah.
But I would like to know if John learned anything from his time with McGillney that's helping him with Michkov.
Yeah, I'll file that away for sure. Yeah.
The other thing too about Michkov, I want to ask you too, he must be enjoying the fact that his teammates have his back, because they have really made that clear to him on and off the ice.
Well, and that's something they've stressed really from day one is resetting the culture here, and they took major steps in that last season. You know, they get rid of some guys the year before that I think they didn't envision as culture guys. And, you know, maybe that's no knock to the guys they got rid of, but they didn't fit. So, you know, that's something I think they've leaned on here through the first part of the season, because the team hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, it's you got a couple new goalies and you've got Michkov here, but other than that, the team is pretty much exactly the same. So, and some of those guys that have talked about that recently. Garnet Hathaway 2 days ago told me, you know, I think we're playing for each other even more now. And even, you know, they win a game in Ottawa 5-4, but they didn't play well. They were dominated territorially throughout pretty much that whole game. But something that both Tortorella and some other guys in the room talked about was their will to change the tide never wavered. They were still getting in front of shots. They were still playing structured defense. They were hoping that they would get enough chances to get back into the game, and that's ending. You know, that ends up being what happened. And then, you know, they follow that with probably their most complete game of the season against Buffalo on Saturday. So. Those are the things that I think they're going to lean on. The fact that these guys do all, it sounds cliche, but I really do think this is a room where the guys all seem to enjoy each other. You know, when a guy like Eric Johnson, who's played 1,000 games, says I think this might be the best room I've ever been in.
Wow.
That says something.
Yeah, it does, especially when you consider he was in Colorado on some pretty good teams.
And won Stanley Cup. Yeah, exactly.
No, I agree with that. Just curious, Kevin, your take on a guy like Nick Delorier. I know how valuable I would have him as a coach. Mm-hmm. A value there in your eyes with the Flyers in terms of what he provides?
Yeah, he hasn't played a whole lot. I think he's only played 5 or 6 games so far. Yeah. So I thought he would be in the lineup a little bit more often. I mean, when we spoke with Danny Briere in Michkov's introductory press conference in July, I believe it was, he joked that we've shown Matvei some Nick Delorier highlights and told him that's his new best friend. So, you know, getting back to Jimmy, what you asked, I mean, there's certainly they've placed an effort on defending Matvei and jumping in for him, and we've seen that happen a number of times. So yeah, I don't know where Delorier fits at the moment. I mean, he's going to play at some point. I would think they'll try to get him back in there soon, but. Yeah, he hasn't really been in, and I think they valued what he brought last year, but just at the moment they have so many forwards here, and they're trying to get some other guys going. Like Tyson Forster at the moment is on the fourth line, and that's a guy that they look at as someone that is potentially part of the future here long term. So, you know, you're not going to scratch Tyson Forster for Nick Delorier probably unless Forster just completely drops off.
Jimmy, it kind of reminds me what the Bruins are doing tonight. You know, they went down to Providence and brought up Kyle. And
You face
know,
Olivier.
you got to think it's because of Olivier from Columbus.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I've done a bunch of stuff with Kevin. I've talked to him over the years, and I was just curious why Delorier wasn't in the lineup more. So those are good answers. Like, you find out when somebody's around the team all the time.
Frankly, I thought, he was scratched throughout the whole collapse in the second half of last season. I thought they should have put him back in there at some point just to try to change the energy a little bit. I mean, as you guys know, I'm sure that the Flyers were in a playoff spot until the middle of March. And then they just completely dropped off, lost like 5-0 to Chicago, lost a couple of games in Montreal. I mean, put Delorier in there, try to change something around a little bit. And they never did that. Not saying he's going to go out there and score 3 goals, but he might help you get out of what was a real team-wide malaise there for the last 3 weeks.
Matthew Olivier's having an unbelievable season. My goodness gracious.
Beast. He's a beast. Hey, before we let you go, Kevin, just quick on the fan base and how they are, dealing with the rebuild and accepting the new philosophies and systems that they're seeing out there. What's the atmosphere been like around the arena?
Yeah, I mean, the Flyers are still swimming upstream in terms of trying to get back on the local sports landscape here. I mean, it's always going to be Eagles number one. The Phillies have been pretty good, so they're popular right now, selling out games every night. The Sixers were supposed to be better. They've been pretty bad so far. I don't know if that's going to change things, but some of the crowds I've seen, like a Monday against San Jose, I didn't think would be a very good crowd, and that was actually pretty decent a couple weeks ago. We'll see what they get tonight on another Monday, but I think they're slowly starting to get back to at least getting back in the conversation when it comes to the sports fans in this town, and it's going to take some time. And you know how these things go. I mean, in 3 years, the Flyers might be a perennial playoff team, and every other team might stink, and that's going to help. But right now, just because all the other 3 teams have been much more successful than the Flyers have been for the last 10 years, it's a struggle. But they also didn't do themselves a lot of favors from the business side before Keith Jones and Danny Briere and Dan Hilford came in. I mean, there were a number of mistakes, and I could just tell from afar, having worked for the organization before and still kind of keeping an eye on them, even when I wasn't back in Philadelphia. I mean, they just sort of lost their whole identity as a franchise. And there's, a guy like Keith Jones that was a strategic move because everyone knows Keith Jones. Everyone likes Keith Jones. And, he can go on local sports radio stations and do interviews all the time, and people are going to listen to him.
And you know what else? He's very underrated. He watches a lot of games. So he would just be a voice piece, but he's an educated voice piece. I worked with him for 16 years.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah.
So I can just tell you, people find out about you when you're on national TV a lot if you don't do your work.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you can't bluff it. He didn't bluff it. He always worked hard, and he was in the studio, and he did really good things. And Jonesy knows, had I gone to Pittsburgh to be the GM probably like 12 years, just before Jimmy Rutherford, Jonesy was taking my job between the benches.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had a long talk in LA about that during the Stanley Cup final between LA and the New York Rangers. We had a long talk about that. So he worked his butt off on TV. He did. He knows the league.
Yeah.
He really does.
Good stuff. Well, Kevin, keep up the great work at The Athletic. We appreciate you taking the time, my friend. We'll see you around the arena.
It's so good to see you, Kev. Thank you.
Anytime. Yeah. Good to see both of you guys.
Oh, you got a story. You got a story to write for Pierre.
I got to write that one down before I forget.
All right. See you later. Kevin Kurz joining us here on the eye test on the Sick Podcast Network. Pierre, I remember him when, as you mentioned there, he used to work with the team and he did PR, and I'm sure you dealt with him a lot too.
A lot.
They were great. I was just going to mention Zach as well. They were really joy to deal with too. And I remember him one time coming in. It was during that Bruins series when the Bruins blew the 3-0 series lead. And so we're down in Philly for games 3 and 4. And I found this, I don't even think it's there anymore. There was this cool little bar. It used to be a firehouse, and they turned it into a bar.
Where in South?
Yeah, it was called Ladder 19 was the name of it.
Okay.
And so we were in there, Joe McDonald and I and a couple of the other media guys, and we had a good time and whatever. We come in, and so the next day we're at the game day skate. He pulls me over and says, "I heard you're a rock star at Ladder 19 last night." And I said, how'd you know this? He goes, I have ears everywhere, Jimmy. That's my job. So don't worry.
One thing I'll tell you, the PR guys in Philly, there
Yeah.
were no stones left unturned. They had sources everywhere.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was getting at. They knew what they were doing.
You're spot on. You couldn't be more right.
Yep.
You know, it goes back to the old Joe Cadillac when he was there, when I was just starting out in the league. Joe was the most immaculately dressed person in the National Hockey League. There wasn't one hair out of place. All the clothes were perfect. The tie was always perfect.
Nice.
But he knew everything about everybody on every team. Everything. Trust me. He knew everything.
So they passed that down then and kept that. Yeah.
100%.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, Pierre, I just found out, actually, I don't know if you got my email, that I am now coming home on the same day as you, but different flight. So you won't have to put up with me on the flight, but we will be going to the airport together on the 30th of November, so I can make it back here in time to attend the Bruins Canadians, the Centennial game at TD Garden on December 1st. But I want to remind everyone, we now have a destination to do our show live from in Dublin. The first day we'll be there, so that's the day we land. We're going to go do some stuff in the city, and then we will be over at the Harry Lemon. The Harry Lemon. I love that name.
I would like to thank my daughter.
Go ahead.
For getting that arranged for us, Justine, who lives and works in Ireland, and she sold it good. She was great, and you know, Jimmy, it's a very famous place. Like it's a very, very famous place.
Yeah. So Pierre, as you told me, it's one of my favorite movies, The Commitments. And if you haven't seen that movie, I highly suggest finding it. It was a great movie about a band out of Ireland that went big, and they started off in a bar there in Ireland. That's the place they used to film it, is the Harry Lemon. So I'm looking forward, because I'm sure they'll have some memorabilia from there. But it looks like a cool place. From what I'm told by my spies over there, they do have the best beef stew in Dublin, is the word on the street. So we're going to have to try that out. And I heard they've got a great fish and chips. That must be the bars over there must really compete to claim who has the best fish and chips, I imagine, huh?
You know what they really compete for? Who pours the best Guinness? Yeah,
that's all you get.
There we go. You know what I got to tell you? Like, it all tastes the same to me. So
it's different over there.
Any of them, like, no disrespect, because I'm sure it's an art form, but I don't understand how one can be better than the other, or one can be worse than the other. But I understand, because that's not my line of work. But I've seen it a million times, and I've heard, oh, Pierre, you got to go to this place. They pour the best Guinness. You got to go to. How do you know? Like,
it just, I think that the way it settles and the texture, like, I can't drink Guinness anymore because I'm celiac, Pierre. But apparently, in Ireland, it is distinctive from how it tastes over here. That's what they tell me.
Yeah, no, that's for sure true, and I can speak to that.
Probably goes through less preservatives. That's
one of my favorites. I'm telling you, Jimmy, and my wife Melanie got me doing it. The non-alcoholic Guinness, when you drink it, you would never, you would never know.
Great,
it's different than the alcohol Guinness. You would never know. I'm just telling you.
Good
so
stuff.
when I was golfing over there a couple summers ago when we were moving our daughter in, I'd go after a round of golf and I would have the non-alcoholic Guinness, and you would Jimmy, I'm telling you, you would never know. You would never know.
Well, I will let everybody know there that so we'll be there at the Harry Lemon, and that'll be at 2 p.m. local time. So if you're going over for the Friendship 4, you got to fly into Dublin. If you're going to be spending a couple of days in Dublin before you head north to Belfast, come join us there at 2 p.m. local time. And for you people watching over here, at least on the East Coast, it will start up at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And then the next 3 days, Pierre, we will be at the Heart Bar in downtown Belfast. Really looking forward to that. Another great music bar. So I'm loving this. My two passions, hockey and music. And it's great. We're going to two of the best.
Going to practice me.
Yep.
This is a hockey business trip for you.
I know, my friend. Don't worry.
I'm just going to make sure you understand that.
I know. I'm on the Pierre regimen once we get on that. All right.
Life's not as fun.
Listen, I'm looking forward to that. So we'll be there 3 days. Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be broadcasting 4 to 5 p.m. local time in Belfast. And then on Thursday, we'll be 3 to 4 p.m. So looking forward to that. We'll keep telling you about it. I'll post stuff on Twitter. So follow me on Twitter, especially if you're flying over there. We would love to meet you at one of those broadcasts. Come say hello. And of course, big thanks to Sarah Stanton for changing my flight and for all the work she's done with Cara Travel. Looking forward to meeting the rest of the crew over there in Island, Pierre.
Yeah. And also the Harry Lemon. Like, seriously, I'm really excited about that. And this is for all the families going over, because I know more and more families are paying attention because we are going over. When we're there, it's right central. It's right off St. Stephen Green. And if you have never been there, you will know what I'm talking about, because it's a very distinct place right near Grafton Street. Come over, because you're not going to sleep. And I know it's before you guys have your team dinners. Come over, meet the other people from the other schools, meet the other parents, meet the other players. There's going to be coaches there. There's going to be a lot of people there. And this is about celebrating hockey and a celebrating unbelievable opportunity in the hockey life that you've lived for so long.
Yep.
Whether you're a parent, whether you're a player, whether you're a referee, whether you're a coach. And, we already know some coaches are coming. So
I think the one we had on Friday is pretty exciting.
For sure. And I think the one we had 2 Fridays ago is coming as well.
Oh, that's right. Scott Borick. Yep. And we will have another Friendship 4 coach on this Friday. Just going to secure it before I give you the name. But by process of elimination, there's 2 schools left. So you can try and figure it out there. But hey, listen, before we start our Q&A and talk about all things NHL or whatever else you want to talk about, we got to do our Betway segment here. And I want to tell you about Betway, because they are the leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Fade me, as I told you. Do not follow me. Go the opposite of what I say right now, and you will win a lot of money, okay? So I have been on a losing streak, Pierre, but I will do my picks anyways. Here is Murph's Sick Pick of the Day.
It's time for Sick Picks. Brought to you by Betway.
All right, we're going to make it quick. I'm giving you a little parlay. Well, not a little one, a 14-er. 14 parlay here. You're going to take the over 6 in the Colorado Avalanche Flyers game. We were just discussing that game with Kevin. The over 6 in the Oilers Habs game. Utah on the money line to win. And then they'll be beating the Capitals. I see a letdown game for the Caps after a big win in Vegas yesterday. And by the way, congratulations, Alexander Ovechkin, Pierre. He is on a roll. And also the over 6 in the Wings Sharks. So that's over 6 in the Avs Flyers, Oilers Habs, and the Wings Sharks, and then the Utah Hockey Club to win. That's a 14 parlay. Good luck. All right, what do we got in our Q&A? GB, who is more of an ankle chopper, Hextall or Billy Smith? I guess
Billy Smith. Billy Smith was. Billy was. I have so much respect for Billy Smith. I was very good friends and former roommates with Chico Resch, who obviously played with Billy in New York and had the privilege of coaching Brian Trottier and Billy Smith. He is such a throwback. He's such a winner, such a battler. Fearless man, just amazing franchise goalie, Stanley Cup winning franchise goalie, but he's tough as nails.
And while we're on the topic of the Islanders too, it's not goalie related, but kudos to them for honoring Brent Sutter. I don't know if you saw that, Pierre. They're doing something for him, and like that's a guy to me. And look, I was just getting into hockey as a kid then, so I know more from what I've heard of you, and from my grandfather and my dad and other people that saw that dynasty. But from everything I can take, he was kind of one of the underrated parts of that team and never really got enough credit, Pierre.
He was a glue guy. He was. You have Brian Trottier, you got Clark Gillies, you got Johnny Tonelli, you got Brent Sutter, Denny Potvin, Kenny Morrow. Look at the personalities on that team. Everybody's a bit different, but Brent was, a glue guy. I consider him to be an amazing friend. I've known him a long time. We've traveled a lot of places. The only regret I've ever had about Brent Sutter and my relationship, I was supposed to go a long time ago. He owns a big cattle ranch just outside Viking, Alberta. And I was supposed to go calving with him. And I've never, because of my schedule, I've never been able to go do it with him. It's something that fascinates me. I'd really like to do it. He keeps telling me, he's told me for years, you got to come up and calve with me. I want to come and do it. I got to figure out time to do it.
Yeah.
But I just have so much respect for him. We really got to be friendly during World Juniors and international events and talked a lot when he coached in New Jersey. We talked a lot when he was the head coach in New Jersey. Just a ton of respect for Brent.
Good stuff. Well, an honor, well deserved. All right, next question. Randy Workman, does Wolf deserve consideration for the Calder? So far, Randy, I would say so.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what do you have, back-to-back shutouts? I think. I mean, he definitely does, 100%.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people they're worried about the size, Pierre, but right now I'll tell you his positioning is compensating for that.
So I read that from Eric Francis yesterday, who's been a guest on our show, and I asked him about it when he was on, and he was kind of like us, not sure. He thought not the size would be a factor. It isn't yet because we're not at game 20. Let's see where we are in game 45.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about. It's not so much now, but I didn't disagree with what Eric was writing. I just thought it's early to say, his size isn't an issue. Right now, it's not. 100% agree with that. 100%.
Here it goes. But I like his poise too out there.
Yes, so athletic is all get out. Really athletic.
Yeah, that game they played against the Bruins here. I remember there were moments where you thought the game was going to go the other way, and he kept it at bay. So all right. Marco Larabi. What's up, Marco? How would you grade Hagen so far this season? Agree with him slipping out of first on some lists. I haven't seen those lists yet, Marco, so forgive me for that. But based on what I've seen, I like him a lot. And I don't know if Pierre is going to call me crazy, but this is a name going back to my childhood that he also went to BC, and his play reminds me a lot of this player, Craig Janey. I'm seeing some Craig Janey in him, Pierre.
There's some Janey in there, no question. He's a lot faster than Craig.
Oh, yeah.
But there's some, first of all, that's an amazing line with Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard and him. It's an amazing line. I'll get to see it a lot this weekend. Northeastern plays at BC Friday. It's already sold out. And then BC's at Northeastern Saturday. That game's sold out too. It's amazing the crowds for college hockey right now. We were at New Hampshire the other day.
Yeah.
6,000
and
people.
Just a season, but it was packed. It was great.
It was jammed. So great crowds all over. But he's a really good player. I got to be – if McKenna was in the draft, I could see it. He's doing this he's playing well. I'll be surprised if he's not first overall pick. I'll be really surprised.
Yeah. So I like what Hagens is doing. Another comparison would be another Bruin too. Adam Oates, little Adam Oates in him. There.
Well, he's a lot faster than Oates. And Adam, don't get mad at me. We're friends. Oates was a better passer. I'll just say that. How about that?
There weren't many better.
Really. Yeah, Hagen's a good player.
Cam Neely liked Adam Oates, I'm sure. All right, next question. Marco Larabi again. What does Pierre think of Frondell as a prospect, top 5?
I have to look more. It's too early for me, Marco, to make that decision right now on him. I'd have to look a lot more.
All right, next question. Brad K. What's the likelihood we'll get 3 Hughes and 2 Kachucks on first lines in the 4 nations for the U.S.? Could happen.
Well, you're going to get 2 Hugheses for sure, and you're going to get 2 Kachucks, barring injury for sure. I don't know if Luke Hughes will make the team or not. I don't know. I mean, it'd be a heck of an accomplishment for him to be on there. Jack's going to make it as long as he's not hurt. Quinn's going to make it as long as he's not hurt. Brady and Matthew are going to make it for the Kachucks. So it's about Luke. The Americans are really deep on defense and they're really deep in goal, and they're really deep up front. The Americans are going to be really tough to play against in that tournament. Billy Guerin talked to us the other day about it, Jimmy.
He did, yeah. He said, who would have thought, Pierre, even, going back to when I was, I don't know, in early high school, mid-90s, late, around there, right when I was going to college, who would have thought you'd hear the GM of USA Hockey saying, we don't know what to do because we could ice 2 good teams.
That's what I mean.
It's amazing. And you can see the astonishment in his eyes when he said that.
That's what Canada used to be. Canada used to say that all the time. Our second team will beat everybody else's first team.
Right. But
Billy didn't go that far, but no, I'm with you.
Yep. So that's going to be an interesting to see how that team gets selected and then how they perform. I think they're going to have a really good shot at winning that. All right, next question. Brad K. Would you be in favor of the NHL and NHLPA adopting the Larry Bird rule to help teams re-sign their own players under a new CBA? Amen, Brad K. Great question. And yes.
So, Brad, I'm going to tell you why I think that. And it's not just because I want to keep star players in one place. I think why you raise that is smart for this reason. There has to be an ability for a team to draft a player, cultivate a player, and have that player stay for the perpetuity of their career. The reason is loyalty. It's brand loyalty. When I was a kid growing up in Montreal, Jean Beliveau started in Montreal and finished in Montreal. Maurice Richard started in Montreal, finished in Montreal. Yvon Cornway started in Montreal, finished in Ottawa. Jacques Lemaire started, finished. I mean, I can go down the line. Jacques Laperriere started, finished. Yep. I'm just telling you, it makes a difference. It's like David Keon. I know there was a WHA involved, but when you think of David Keon, I know he was in Hartford and New England. I get it. I totally get it. He's a Toronto Maple.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a Leaf.
Exactly.
And so I think that what the emailer, the texter sent in is so smart because I think it leads to brand loyalty. So I would agree wholeheartedly.
And Pierre, and we'll talk about this more because we're running tight on time, but I want to bring it up tomorrow. There's reports now about the cap going up upwards of $100 million within a couple of years. Who knows if that happens? But relating it to this subject, if it were to go that high, this would really help to keep those players because the higher it goes, it's going to be tough to do that.
I don't want to be the dean of negativity.
You don't have to. You're the dean of reality. That's what
people better start looking at where the Canadian dollar is right now. There's 7 teams in Canada, okay? So for everybody to understand, Canadian teams take in Canadian dollars and pay out US. It's almost a 50-cent dollar. We're getting close. Just so everybody understands. I don't see that being beneficial to Canadian teams or their ownership groups. Outside of Toronto and Montreal, I don't see that being a benefit.
Yeah. So that's the topic we're going to look at and discuss a little more as the week goes on here. But let's get to the next question. Randy Workman. Pierre, have you seen Flames prospect forward Roy Kerins? I hope I pronounced the name right.
Briefly, not nearly enough. And it's something that I do need to get on. Definitely.
Check it out. All right. Next question. GB, are the Habs ever going to retire Jacques Lemaire's number 25?
I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised, but I would say this. It definitely merits serious consideration. It definitely does. I've said it once. I'm going to say it a million times more before my career is over. In my humble opinion, the best player who ever coached in the NHL and had success was Jacques Lemaire. I don't think Jacques Lemaire was ever given enough respect for how good a player he was in Montreal. And the reason why is he was surrounded by superstars. He was an elite player on it.
You know what Billy said about him last week, too? Billy Garham, when he was on with us talking about him?
Best coach he ever had. Best coach. I didn't rehearse that with Billy. I coached him.
What a way to start your career, too, to go into that.
I know how good he was. Trust me. That's one thing. Whether you coach against Brian Sutter or Scotty Bowman or Pat Quinn or the late Pat Burns, I coached against Barry Melrose. All these guys that were at the top of their game, all of them. So I think I have a pretty good feeling for who was really good and who wasn't. And Jacques Lemaire was as good as there was.
And I got to say, too, for the Canadians, it must be tough to decide who goes up there because there's just such a selection to draw from. So compared to other teams, All right, next question. Gabriel Lamb, do you think Mike Sullivan is on the hot seat? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think he should put it that way. I don't think he should be, but he could be if he isn't already.
We're going to go back to what I said last week to you, Jimmy. And I was not trying, and I didn't have my picture up that day. I was driving from Canton, New York to Boston. So I did it all by voice. And I said to you, in Pittsburgh, they've made a lot of roster mistakes since the new management group has come in. And so is that Mike's fault or is that new management and new ownership's fault? Mike didn't get dumb. Mike's a really good coach.
Yeah.
He's a really great coach. So I don't know. I mean, unless Mike goes to him and says, you know what? It's like a little bit, and I'll use this because it happened. Paul Maurice went to ownership in Winnipeg and he said, you know what, fellas? My message isn't getting through to the room.
Right.
I need some time away. You need to think about who you want behind the bench. It'll be good for you. It'll be good for me. And it'll be better for the players.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt Paul. Look what Paul did. Paul, resuscitated himself. He went down to Florida. He did a really good job. Back-to-back trips to the final, wins one of them. If Mike wants to do that, maybe Mike says, you know what? I've tried everything. I can't get through them anymore.
I would say that. Pierre's literally just going to suggest the same thing. It wouldn't surprise me if that eventually happened. Who knows? We'll see. But that's obviously something we're going to keep an eye on throughout the season. All right, next question. Brandon Parker, great show as always, guys. Can you give my son Lennox a shout out? He just scored during his scrimmage for his U7 Sackville Knights team here. Thanks again for the show, guys. Love from Nova Scotia. Hey, Lennox, congratulations from the eye test from Pierre and me. That's awesome. Keep up the great work, buddy.
Sackville, there's a big military base there. I'm so happy to hear that. Way to go, Lennox. That's awesome. Way to go.
And I love people from Nova Scotia too. So congratulations.
How could you not? How could you not? They're the hardiest souls. There's fantastic people.
Really are.
So many good trips into Nova Scotia over the course of my career. You know, Jimmy, if I were a college coach, that'd be one place where I would identify trying to get major junior.
Yeah.
We talked about it with Ben Barr.
Yep.
Told them, you know, you gotta own Halifax. You gotta own Cape Breton. You know, you gotta own into. I know it's tough, but you got to own into Moncton. You know, you got to own into these places. If you're one of those border schools, especially close like Maine is to the Maritimes.
Yep, I agree. And I saw a sound the siren over there. I said, great show as well. Thank you, man. We appreciate all your support out there, all our viewers and listeners. We really do. And then Pierre, like I said to you, was pretty cool. You know, I was at that UNH game with you and coming back from the bathroom and somebody came up and, hey, great job on the eye test. So it's great when we hear that. We appreciate the support. So,
yeah, we're so grateful for this. You know, we're past the year now, huh?
We are. That's right. We celebrated our year anniversary last Wednesday. So that flew by. Time flies when you're having fun.
We kept working in the summer too.
Yeah, that was good.
A hot round table. Everybody else was out golfing or at the beach. We were sitting in the studio.
We did. So, and now we'll be headed to Ireland to talk some hockey over there. Looking forward to that for the Friendship 4. We will be leaving on Sunday, but we'll keep telling you more about that as the week goes on. Thanks to Kevin Kurtz of The Athletic for joining us. He was great. It's good to have him on.
Thank you. Really good seeing Kevin. Jimmy, other things before you go?
Yeah, of course.
Just some house clearing for our viewers and listeners. We're working hard to try to get sponsorship to do the Four Nations in Montreal and in Boston. We're starting to make progress with that. I told Jimmy, had a long discussion with somebody involved with the event. So hopefully we can get something like that going. It'd be great to interact with fans in Montreal and obviously in Boston.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is our trip potentially to Maine. I can't say enough about that. If we were to go there when Denver's at University of Maine at the beginning of January. And I know that Ben Barr and the people at the University of Maine are really trying to make that work. So if that can work out, that'd be awesome too. That'd be really
we're hoping to make that a regular thing where we get on the road on Fridays to do on-campus Friday, obviously schedule permitting. But if we can at least do a couple more of those throughout the rest of the college hockey season, that would be great. So we'll have more details as they come. But until then, this has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.